Good morning. The old man here, October 8th, 2025. Third video for the day. This one going to be more or less a continuance of yesterday. Uh, I've been stacking for the last couple of years, and many times, I would say at least the last year and a half, I've always questioned whether I was doing the right thing and whether, how fast the market was going to get to where I thought it was going. Most of these guys for the longest time that I'm following and watching, they're all pretty educated and they're going on past history. And yes, history is a guide, but that is all it is. This time is different. Uh, Most of the time, if you say this time is different, you're going to be made fun of because it's always goes back to basics. Well, this time is different because we're seeing a capital rotation, and the last couple capital rotations, it was from gold to silver, or excuse me, gold to fiat. They did everything they could do to get you out of gold to keep the fake fiat system going. They had to crush gold and silver down to stupid low values to keep you in the fake fiat system. Um, in the fake fiat system has run on faith. Everybody had to have faith in the system. Dollar was backed by nothing. Nothing. So you had to have faith in the system. But not only you had to have faith in the system, but everybody across the world had to have faith in the dollar. Now, over the last, you could go back a ways, but in fact, one of the reasons why we got off the gold standard in 71 is because we were printing so much money. And at that time, you could take a dollar and trade it, or excuse me, you could take $35 if the federal government, US federal government owed you money. For every $35 that they owed you, you could collect an ounce of gold. Well, they seen the printing we were doing during Vietnam, totally irresponsible printing. And I'm sure it was before that, it was as well, but it got to the point of being obvious across the world that we were printing more and more money, and the dollar wasn't worth anywhere near what they claimed it to be. So many countries come to the U.S. and demanded their gold. Well, versus running out of gold, Nixon had to shut it down, and Nixon did. He shut it down. You could no longer convert your fake fiat U.S. dollars to gold anymore. And at that point, we were on a 100% fake fiat currency system. Much like I said yesterday, though, they all had to go along because of our power and dominance in the world of our currency, of the dollar. They didn't have much choice, but they also realized that, well, hey, we can just fleece our citizens, that'll work. And that's exactly what they've done. They've fleeced the citizens so many years now, and this is why you're seeing uprisings in, pre-pandemic. You were seeing uprisings in China. Now you're seeing uprisings in Britain. You're seeing uprisings in Germany. You're seeing uprisings in France and other places. Those are just the top of my head, what I could think of. And the citizen has been fleeced to the point now where he can't take it anymore. He can't make ends meet no matter what he does. Okay. Now, we're not as bad off in the U.S. as they are. Again, we've been fleecing them, and then their citizens have been fleecing them. So at the end of the day, those guys are in worse shape than we are. Maybe only slightly worse, but worse. And with Trump at the helm, I think you're going to see the end of the fake fiat system in the U.S., and they're working on a new monetary system. I think that monetary system is going to be based on gold and silver. If you'd like, look at the BRICS and what they're doing. I'm not saying the BRICS is going to be the end all be all, but at the end of the day, a very similar system. The dollar not only has to be backed by gold, but it's got to be interchangeable with gold. In other words, if you don't like what the government's doing, you're going to have to be able to go to the government and say, hey, here's your fake fiat currency and I want my gold. Now, how's that going to work? I don't know. We'll see. But at the end of this deal, I'm telling you, 98% of the people in this country right now do not see it. They do not see what's coming. They have no clue. They're still in this casino. They're having a good time for the most part. You know, guys that got stocks and bonds and whatever else, they're still having a good time. Now, the lower 50% that don't have stocks and bonds, they've been sucking hind tit for quite a few years now. And I'm sure that could be even a few of my listeners today. If you think you're doing everything you can and you're still going backwards, well, it was planned that way. And it was planned by previous governments. Don't blame this particular government. You are going to see real change. With this government shutdown, Trump, day one, and this is what we need to do. We need to get rid of the bureaucracy. There's so many positions out there in the federal government that produce absolutely nothing. Nothing. And they need to go. That's a twofold. Well, number one, they are producing nothing, therefore they are sucking from the economy and not providing or producing anything. They are a detriment to the society by not producing anything. And not even a service. I mean, it'd be one thing if they provided a service. Now, there are lots of federal employees, don't get me wrong, if you're one, I'm not picking on you. There's lots of federal employees that do provide a service, and we need them. But there's many, many, many. I would say for every one that we need, there's 20 we don't. And my understanding is day one of the government shutdown, Trump got rid of 240,000, and another 100,000 voluntarily quit in the meantime. They see the handwriting on the wall. Most of those, I believe, that quit were people that had enough time in the system that they could retire out, and that's what they've done. And we're going to see more and more of that as time goes by. But the important thing to understand is that going back to what I was saying yesterday, and I don't know as if I really got it through, these portfolio managers or money managers, if you will, they're now recommending a 60-20-20 portfolio instead of a 60-40. In other words, 60% stocks and 40% bonds. They are now recommending a 60-20-20, and that being 60 stocks, 20 bonds, and 20 gold. Well, so I had a friend of mine ask me the other day, he says, well, where do you think gold and silver is going? And I said, I don't want to put a dollar figure on it. No matter what I say, it's going to be wrong. That doesn't make sense. But what I will tell you is, as of late, you know, we just hit 4,000. So let's just use 4,000. Maybe we should use 3,800. I don't know. But let's say as of late, they're now going from less than 1% gold allocation in these portfolios to now what they're recommending is a 20%. That is a huge change. You know, it'd be different if they said, you know, you need to do a 60-35-5. You know, that would be a big change. But to say a 60-20-20, oh my God, that is just phenomenal. What that means is the system has given up on the fake. They see it. The fake fiat currency is coming to an end. They want their clients to have that 20% base, because if they don't, when they get wrecked on the stocks, they won't have nothing left to invest. They'll be spending their bonds just to stay alive. So therefore, they're going to need the gold to invest in the future. To even have a life in the future, you're going to have gold. But it also goes for silver. Now, silver, is a horse of another color. Gold is going to pull up silver with it as a monetary, you know, monetary asset along with gold. Gold's not going to serve everybody. The value is going to be such. Even a gram of gold now, I'm seeing sell for $135 to $155 a gram at different websites. I just checked out some different websites to see what they're asking for them, and I'm like, holy shit! It wasn't that long ago I could buy a gram for under $100. It was still a pretty decent premium though. That's why I didn't buy any. But I could buy them for under 100, and now they're 135, $150, and it's just going to keep going up. So gold's not going to serve everybody. Silver is more likely to serve the average citizen. The change in your pocket. I remember when I was a kid to see my grandfather have $20 bills in his wallet. I'm like, oh man, that's a big deal. Nobody had 50s and 100s, not the average Joe. They didn't have 50s and 100s in their pocket. And today, hardly anybody, most people, I mean, a 20 spends like a $5 bill used to spend years ago. And now a 50 and 100, you get paid and you get paid in 50s and 100s, and they don't even go very far. It's just crazy the way things have gone. But silver is in the future, when everything comes back to reality, and we get rid of these overvalued, the dollar values where you just see the dollar, everything costing more and more and more because the dollar is falling farther and farther down, and purchasing power is less and less. And like I said before in a prior video, they're going to try to fix this next crash. It's coming. I think it looks like, anyways, at least for a little while, with the rate cuts, and they're talking about 3 more rate cuts by the end of the year. They're talking about 25-point rate cuts. Don't be surprised if those 25-point rate cuts go to 50-point rate cuts. Don't be surprised at all. Trump, I think, was kind of warning you when he said he wants to see it cut by 3%, 3 whole percent, not three, not. That's a lot. That is an awful lot. And what he knows he can't do it, and he knows the feds don't want to do it, but they're going to have to do it. And you watch and see. I think you'll see by the end of the year, you'll see 3 rate cuts, and they will 3 or 4, maybe even a 4th rate cut, and they'll be 50-point rate cuts. They're going to try to save the system, and what's going to make them panic is not inflation. They've already told you they've given up on inflation. It is what it is. What they're panicking about is job loss. And like I said, the numbers are fugazi, because so many people that were working at the beginning of the pandemic were forced to work from 2008 to the pandemic, 2019-ish. They were forced to work because they lost most of their stock portfolio in the 2008 crash, and therefore they couldn't afford to retire, so they had to work. And come the pandemic, well, they're about where they were, and they were kind of flush. So, they took the pandemic money and just quit and never went back to work. And then, like I said before, the young kids, they're looking at this as that I can't even make a living at $10 an hour. It's pointless. Why take a $10 an hour job? I refuse to work and go negative every week. It doesn't make sense. I can sit in my mama's basement and be negative, and I don't even have to put out any effort to be negative. So they've chosen to stay home for the most part. A lot of them have. Some are working, but a lot of them have chosen to stay home, and mostly because their parents are allowing it for now. But that's going to also come to an end when their parents get squeezed pretty hard. Everybody's going to have to get out and get a job. It's going to be interesting to see how this rolls with so many people basically having no clue what's coming. They're going to be blindsided. Not only aren't they prepped, they're not prepped financially, they're not prepped with physical goods as far as food and water and even safety, firearms and ammunition. They're not prepped at all. They have no clue what's coming, and at best 2% do. Okay, if you're new to this space, I suggest you start prepping, looking ahead. That's what prepping is all about, is looking ahead, not looking at midweek next week, not looking at the end of the week next week, but look a month ahead, 2 months ahead. Have food and water and ammunition stocked to the point where you're good for at least 3 months. And when you get to 3 months, work on 6 months. When you get to 6 months, work on a year. But in the meantime, you also need to work on your financial and work on and finances, and that might be now fixed debt. That's one thing. Being maybe a car loan. Don't get a new car loan, but if you already got one, work on that fixed debt, keep paying on it, keep up the payments, don't fall behind. Same thing with your house, keep making the payments, don't fall behind. But as far as that credit card debt, that's not fixed debt. They can raise them as things get worse and worse. And these banks, and it's already showing failures. People are getting farther and farther behind on their student loans, farther behind in their home loans, farther behind in their vehicle loans, farther behind in their credit card loans. And when this starts going parabolic, a lot of these banks are going to be they're already in big trouble, but they're not showing the numbers on their books. But eventually they'll have to, and when things start to come apart, it's going to be fast, it's going to be hard. And you can't wait till then to start prepping, because everything's going to be so expensive, because there's going to be a mad rush for the door, and everybody's going to be trying to grab shit on the way out. So I suggest you start working on it now. And, as far as stacking gold and silver, a lot of people think, well, man, I missed the boat. Gold was cheap 2 years ago or 4 years ago. I should have been buying gold 2 or 4 years ago. Well, I thought the same thing when I started prepping 2 years ago, almost 2.5 years ago now. I thought, God damn it, I should have been stacking back in 2000. Well, the fact of the matter is I didn't. Okay, get over it, move ahead. Move ahead. Don't worry about the past in that regard. What could have been, what should have been. You didn't do it. It's over with. Just like the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. Buy your first, if you haven't already done it, buy your first ounce of silver. If you can't afford gold, I understand. If you do buy even the smallest gold purchase, is going to carry a very high premium when you think about it. So instead of doing that and paying a high premium, stack silver right now. The silver is going to be what the average Joe is going to need anyways. I suggest you buy the lowest premium silver, and most newbies are going to go into the coin shop and say, what should I buy? And the guy that's trying to do the right thing, he's going to say, he's going to have to ask you a bunch of questions, figure out where you're going, where you're at, and where you're going. Well, help the poor bastard out. He's going to be busier than shit. I'm telling you, what you need to buy is the lowest premium silver you can buy. Now, with that being said, there's coinage out there that's 40% silver, 30% silver. Don't buy that crap. Nobody wants it. It's very hard to sell. It's not liquid. You're going to take it in the shorts when you go to sell it. You're going to get it at a low premium, but you're going to have a hard time selling it. At the very least, I would buy premium wise or purity wise would be 925, and that could be sterling silver. If you have to buy sterling silver to get low premiums, fine, buy it. Buy, even if you have to, buy spoons, buy forks that are sterling silver. They're clearly marked sterling silver, and you got to know what you're looking at. But still, if you're buying it from somebody that knows, or make sure it's not silver plated. That's all. Do some research if that's what you're going to do. know your markings very well, and you can do all right with that. And again, if you can buy it from a local coin shop that's honest, again, build a reputation with the guy, get to know the guy, you'll be a lot farther off than trying to buy online from any of the big guys. Although, like I said, I realize some of the big guys, if you're 100 miles away or even 50 miles away from the nearest coin shop, and if the guy's a shyster, well, that ain't going to do no damn good at all. At least these big guys, they are a little bit shysters. You got to watch what they're doing, what they're telling you, but so be it. You got to, again, do the research, understand the system. And if you have any questions, you can ask me. I guess I'll do my best to help you out. As far as that goes, if nothing else, I'll do a video, because if you got a question, I'll bet you 20 or 30 or 50 other people have the same question. So much like my CPL class, a lot of classes, everybody afraid to ask a question. They don't want to look stupid. Well, the funny part about it is 3/4 of the people in the crowd had the same question, and they're glad the other guy had the balls. They asked the question. So step up, ask the questions. I'll do the very best I can to answer them, and typically I'll answer them. If it's simple, I may answer it in a comment, but if it's more significant, I'll probably do a video on it instead, of which tends to help everybody even more so. So again, back to this capital rotation deal, it is so huge. And a buddy of mine said, and I'll continue where I left off, a buddy of mine says to me, he says, well, where can you see it going? And I said, well, I don't want to put a dollar figure on it, but when you think these portfolio or money managers had less than 1%, but let's call it 1% in anybody's portfolio, less than 1% allocated to gold, and they now recommending going to 20%, that's a 20-fold move from here. From here. And whether you want to call that a 20-fold move from 3,800 or a 20-fold move from 4,000, it doesn't matter. You need to get, and again, that's going to be gold. And if you can't afford gold without paying some stupid premiums, okay, you can buy 1 ounce gold that now is going to cost you over $4,000. And if you got that kind of cheese laying around, by all means, buy the gold. But if you don't, and you want to buy that 1 gram of gold, and you're paying a $20, at least a $20 premium on it, you ain't stacking gold very well. When you can buy silver that everybody's going to need anyways. It's going to be much more, well, I'd say as liquid, but even more liquid. You're not going to have to sell it at the goddamn coin shop or the pawn shop. You can sell it or trade it to your buddy, because he's going to want it or need it for trade. But even sterling silver, if you have no money when everything crashes and you got a sterling silver spoon, and you need, let's say you need firewood to heat your house, you don't think the guy cutting firewood ain't going to take a sterling silver spoon? All he's got to have is a $10 scale, for Christ's sakes. And if you don't think he ain't going to educate himself on what sterling is, you're wrong. And he's going to figure out the math too. Okay? Don't be afraid of sterling. Just be aware of what you're buying. That's all I got to say. It's not that hard to do the research and know what the markings are and know what they say. Excuse me. And or buy it from somebody that is legit. It makes life a lot easier. But if you can't do that, you could buy it from somebody else. By all means, do it. But be aware of what you're buying. That's the big thing. But yes, if gold 20x's from here, you don't think the little brother ain't going to do the same or more? There's going to be such a squeeze on silver and the need for silver. You got your industrial demand, sure. But you got to remember, we've been in what I call a heavy recession. And what we're looking at next with layoffs, when the numbers really start coming out, is going to be technically a depression, whether they want to admit it or not. They don't. I don't care if they say, well, we're in a depression or not. They may say, oh, now we'll say we're in a recession when we're technically been in a recession, but they didn't. They skewed the numbers so that you wouldn't know. And now we're in a depression, and they're going to say, oh, we're in a light recession. It's okay. Everything's okay. Bullshit. Jobs are going to be hard to come by. You're going to have to take care of yourself. Nobody's coming to save you. And if you said, and I see this comment so often in other people's videos, not so much in mine, but in other people's, well, I just don't have the money to buy even silver. I don't have the money to buy it. Then you need to change what you're doing in your life. You really do. Ain't gonna make a difference to me. It's gonna make a difference to you and your family at the end of the day. You're wasting money or you're not working hard enough. I'm here to tell you when I was 17 years old, I think 17 years old in 79, and things were going to hell in a handbasket. In fact, the word around Michigan was the last man out, please turn out the lights. Everybody was leaving Michigan. This state was dead. The audio industry was dead. And I had 3 jobs with my friends. I look around my friends and they're all unemployed or underemployed. If not unemployed, they were underemployed. In other words, they were working at a gas station for minimum wage, of which wasn't shit then and it ain't shit now. But they were working at a gas station for minimum wage and only working 20 hours a week. Again, they were living in their mama's basements too. But I was living at home for a moment, but I was working 3 jobs and I was helping my grandparents out on the farm. I stayed there. I stayed with my mom and dad. I stayed with friends. I didn't have my own place, but I didn't really care. I just basically, I was working 70, 80, 90 hours a week. I needed somewhere to sleep every night. And that's all I needed. I could eat as I went. I could, I found cheap ways to feed myself. I didn't go out and buy restaurants and McDonald's and all that bullshit. I might stop at a grocery store and buy a package of goddamn hot dogs and heat the hot dogs up on a fire, for Christ's sakes, or heat them up on a pan on a friend's house, or my mom's house or my grandparents' house. I'd come home, heat up a pan of beans and a can of beans and a can with some hot dogs, and that was my lunch or supper or whatever. And you just got to learn how to make ends meet. That's the thing. You need to change the way you're doing things if you don't think you can afford silver. I bought what I needed back then. I took care of myself, even at 17 years old. I could see what was coming. My buddies had to leave the state in order to get a job, and I still had 3 jobs, 1 full-time job and 2 part-time jobs. Like I said, I was working 80, 90 hours a week. So, at one point, even jobs were so hard to get. There was a welding shop here in Midland, and I went there and applied for the job, and he said, dude, he says, I'd hire you, but I really can't afford you. And I go, well, I understand. I know what you're saying. You don't think you can afford me because I'm green and I just come out of school. I said, but what about this? I says, I'll work for you this week. All I want is $20 for gas. I can get here every day for the next week for $20. That's all I need for gas to get here. And I'll figure out how to feed myself and shit as far as that goes. And I says, at the end of the week, if you don't think this is profitable for you, then I'll just go about my way. You don't owe me shit. And at the end of the week, and he said, okay, I can't lose it. That deal cost me $20 for you to work for a week. I'll do that. And at the end of the week, he says, how much do you need? Because I busted ass and we made some shit. We fabricated and we made some shit. Now that job only lasted about 6 months before he went belly up. But that's because the jobs weren't coming in. It's not that we weren't busting shit out. It's just the way it goes. Back then everything was failing fast. Just the way it is. And many people lost their businesses back in those days just because again, like I said, last man out, turn out the lights, because Michigan was really going downhill fast. But I had plenty of work to do, and I made money, and I could have saved money. In fact, I did save money. Not like you'd like to, but I made it work when other people were broke, living at home, and crying and whining. So it's all about what you make of it. Um, Good news is, on the other side of this pile of shit, we'll be done with this fake fiat currency. We'll be on some sort of a gold or silver standard. Um, I highly recommend get to your, do whatever you can to make money right now. If you got shit laying around that you can sell it while there's still a market. Even if you think you're taking a bit of a loss, so what? Move it, buy some silver. If you can't afford an ounce of gold where your premium's going to be pretty low, then buy an ounce of silver, buy 2 ounces, buy 3 ounces of silver. But I don't know if I answered that question earlier. When you go into your local coin shop, instead of asking them, what should I buy, and leaving that wide open for him to take advantage of you, possibly, I'm not saying he's going to, but possibly take advantage of you, go in there, sound like you got some knowledge, and say, hey, what do you got? What are you selling that's got the lowest premium? And I don't want 40%. I don't want 30%. The least I'm willing to accept is 90%. I would almost, in the beginning, stay away from even the sterling. But it ain't going to hurt you to go to, if you need to or you want to, and you understand sterling, don't be afraid to go to sterling. It's a good way to go. It really is. Maybe that's not the place you want to start, though. Start with what they call secondary market. In other words, they bought silver back from somebody, so it's coinage that's been out in the system and back in again. Maybe it's scratched, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And don't fall for the sovereign coin bullshit and paying $3 and $4 and sometimes $6 an ounce over spot. That's just buying somebody's bullshit. That's buying somebody's narrative. Silver Eagle isn't worth any more, in my opinion. An ounce of silver, U.S. silver mint, isn't worth any more than a 1 ounce generic round. But yet people are paying $3, $2, $3, $4, $5 premium, $6 premium for American Silver Eagles. It's crazy. Or even a little bit cheaper than that, maybe a couple dollars cheaper than that. They're buying maple leafs from Canada. It still don't mean shit. You want to buy silver. You don't care about the sovereign coins. It doesn't matter. You want silver in your hand. They say recognizable silver. Well, if you don't recognize generic silver, guy needs to get an education, and he'll get that education soon when the fake fiat dollar isn't buying nothing. And same thing goes for, and if you want something recognizable, then buy junk silver, buy constitutional silver, same thing. That's 90% silver. Buy that. Right now it's got a low premium, but I see that going away. During the pandemic, when everything was huge, premiums on Silver Eagles really went up and premiums on junk silver really went up. So as of right now, it's pretty low. In fact, I think I can buy it at spot or a little bit back of spot. But again, I buy from the same guy all the time. He knows he knows me. He knows what I like to buy. And he takes care of me because I keep coming back every week. But good luck, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by again. If you would, like and subscribe. Take a minute, definitely, before you back out of this video and subscribe. Or, well, yeah, I'd like you to subscribe. But like this video and just leave a quick comment. I appreciate it. Thank you.